Welcome back to a special Holy Week or Passion Week edition of a joint broadcast or podcast of the Cultural Hall and the podcast, The Scriptures Are Real. I'm Kerry Muhlestein, the Scriptures Are Real host, and I have with me Dr. Andrew Skinner, who is helping me as we do these short episodes to help people celebrate Holy Week or Passion Week. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Skinner.
Thank you so much. It's just a privilege to be with you.
Well, today we are talking about Holy Monday. Or the Monday of the last week of the Savior's life. And if you haven't heard our first episode, we'd encourage you to do that, where we set up the idea of Passion Week or the Holy Week and celebrating it and so on, as we, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, try to, maybe we could say, level up our worship on this Easter season. So, Dr. Skinner, why don't you take us through a little bit Holy Monday?
Well, thank you. This is day 2 of Holy Week. It begins early in the morning after Jesus's participation or activities on Palm Sunday. He goes back to Bethany, and there he lodges for the evening with, one assumes, his apostles, because early Monday morning they are returning to the city of Jerusalem. And Matthew chapter 21, verse 18 tells us that as they're traveling, Jesus was hungry. And so they, somewhere on the Mount of Olives, they come to a fig tree. And of course, this, what I'm trying to say, this fits well with what we know about the geography of the area, because the place where Jesus mounted the donkey colt the previous day is called Bethphage or Bethphage, house of figs. And you can kind of see the resemblance in the word phage to the English word fig. And so they come to this fig tree, and they find that it has no fruit. It has leaves, but it doesn't have the purpose for which it was created, to produce fruit. And so Jesus curses the fig tree. And this is a powerful lesson, both to the apostles of ancient times and to us today, because it's one of the few times we see Jesus using his power to curse rather than to bless. And we wonder about that. We also, I think, wonder what the poor little fig tree did to deserve being cursed. But one of the lessons that I think Jesus is attempting to demonstrate graphically on this second day of Holy Week is that there really isn't a place for hypocrites in the Lord's kingdom. And I don't mean all of us who make mistakes and sometimes don't do what we've covenanted to do, but this is purposeful, trying to present ourselves as something we know we are not. And that's the definition of a hypocrite. The Greek word hypokritai, which Jesus must have come in contact with when he was growing up in Galilee, in Nazareth. There was not far from where he was raised, where he was growing up. There's a theater there, and so he undoubtedly picked up that word and his understanding of it. And that's what he's trying to teach here, I think, is number one, you can't pretend to be something that you're not and expect the blessings of the Lord when you have covenanted to be what you said you would be. And so, hypokritai is a play actor. One who wears a mask to present a character, but down deep, the actor is not really that at all. And this is the fig tree. This is a graphic illustration by the fig tree.
And interestingly, sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. I was going to say, and this would have been well known by the apostles because they know, as those of us who have lived in the Holy Land know, that the figs on a fig tree appear at the same time that the leaves start popping out.
Right.
And so this isn't a case of, well, we just have to wait for the fruit to appear. No, this is the big leafy fig tree, and it should have had fruit because the fruit appears at the same time, but it doesn't. And so Jesus then is using this as a graphic illustration that we can't have the blessings of covenant keepers when we're actually hypocrites.
Very, very good and very powerful. And it's the perfect I guess primer for what he will do, because when he gets down onto the Temple Mount, and we'll talk about going there and so on in a second, but he spends most of his day teaching, and the primary thing he teaches about is the hypocrisy of some of the Jewish leaders and
Yeah.
people, and so he is going to spend most of his day talking about hypocrisy, but he has primed his apostles and others to understand this by this symbolic action. It's a real action, but it has symbolism behind it.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, he spends most of his days during Holy Week teaching. And it's not just the fact that he's teaching and he's teaching exalting principles, but it's where he's doing it. And that's the reason that he leaves Bethany in the morning, climbs up over the Mount of Olives back into Jerusalem, because he teaches in the temple. He's daily teaching in the temple, as he says. And he's teaching sacred things in what is supposed to be a sacred place, the most sacred place on earth, and yet it is being overseen or being managed by those who are supposed to be holy but are not. That is the high priest and the chief priests and the elders of the people. And that's part of the hypocrisy, I think, that he's drawing attention to. And there are other lessons, of course, that can be drawn from this exquisite illustration, one of which is that Jesus wants his apostles and others to know that he has power over all things. He has power over nature. He created nature. He created worlds without number. He has power over all things. He has power to curse and to destroy, as well as power to bless and to create. And he also, I think, is teaching a lesson about faith, that great faith really does produce great things. All things are possible to those of us who have faith, and faith, I think, is sometimes misunderstood by young people. It certainly was misunderstood by me when I was growing up. Faith is not wishful thinking. Faith is literally an understanding that Jesus Christ and our Father in heaven have power to do what they said they will do, power to do what they promised to do, and it's trust and confidence in them that constitutes faith. It's not wishful thinking. Gee, I wish this would happen or that would happen. And faith is so intricately tied to hope in the scriptures that it's almost impossible to tease them apart profitably, tease them apart, because faith is trust in our Father in heaven and his Son Jesus Christ, and hope is best defined as expectation, that there's an expectation there. So this is an important lesson, that all things are possible to those who have true faith. And then you mentioned the idea of Jewish leaders becoming corrupt, and we have seen this before. Not to put too fine a point on it, but we saw it in John chapter 12, the chapter that talks about Jesus spending the Sabbath day, Saturday before Palm Sunday, with Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And we're told that when people find out that Jesus is going to be in the home of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, they want to come and see him, but they also want to come and see Lazarus, because we're told that not only did the chief priests, the high priest, and the Pharisees form a conspiracy as to how they can get rid of Jesus, they also want to get rid of the evidence of Jesus's great miracle of raising Lazarus. And so Lazarus has a contract put out on him, quote unquote. And so these are individuals who are corrupt, and by their corruption, they are corrupting Judaism itself.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's worth mentioning on this day, we have in the Mark account, this is the day where the Savior cleanses the temple. I think in the Matthew account, he has him doing it the day before on the Palm Sunday. I don't know which day it was that he did it, but I think it's worth thinking about that as the Savior is going to spend his entire week teaching here, he is going to cleanse the temple. He very much regards this as his Father's home. I think it's worth pointing out that as they are getting ready for Passover, and the beginning of Passover will also start the beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, where they're supposed to go a week without leaven. And part of the tradition of that is that you spend the time before making sure there's no leaven in your house. You completely clean the house and make sure there's no crumbs there. So as Judaism is busy, as the people in Jerusalem are busy cleaning out their houses, the Savior goes to clean his Father's house. And there are some powerful lessons that we can learn there. But in any case, I think one of the things I hope comes from our emphasis on the Holy Week is that each day we can think of some things we can do to become more holy. And that's one thing to think about is how can we become a little less hypocritical. We all have some way. No one is perfectly living up to their ideals that they would like to be. You can't strive for being better without having a gap between what you want to be and what you are. So I wouldn't say that's hypocrisy, but we can probably all identify something in which we can align ourselves a little bit more with what we proclaim to be and wish to be. We don't have to feel guilty about that, but this is a good opportunity to just think about that and ask the Savior for help. And I think that's what he really wants us to do, is to ask him for help. And as we do that, in a way, that's cleansing our own temple. If we are God's temple, which in many ways we are, we can cleanse some things out of our own temple, and that will help us to be more what we are intending to be and trying to be, and less like the corrupt leaders, or less worldly, we could just say.
Excellent. One more thing probably ought to be mentioned, and that is that on this second day of Holy Week, Jesus also gives the parable of the vineyard according to Matthew chapter 21. And this includes a powerful lesson about Jesus himself as the chief cornerstone, a phrase or a reference that we find in the scriptures. And this theme will be picked up upon by the Apostle Paul in Ephesians when he's welcoming converts into the church. And he says, "You're no more strangers and foreigners, fellow citizens with the saints, the household of God, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone." Paul has understood what Jesus is teaching the second day of Holy Week, that Jesus himself is the chief cornerstone, and it stays with the Apostle Paul, and he makes it a part of his teaching to those who join the covenant community, the Christian community, years after Jesus has been resurrected. And then finally, Luke is the one that indicates that Jesus, after the second day, will return again to Bethany, up over the Mount of Olives, and there he'll lodge there for the night, and will be back in Jerusalem on the third day of Holy Week, which is Tuesday.
Wonderful. And one other thing that I might suggest is because the Savior, we're trying to think of how we can, again, level up our worship and gratitude for the Savior, and learn and appreciate what he's done for us. And because he kept going to the temple really every day of this Passion Week or Holy Week, might be a good week for us to also spend some time in the temple. So it's just a thought.
An excellent thought.
Well, thank you to our audience, and thank you, Dr. Skinner, and we hope you'll join us tomorrow as we talk about Holy Tuesday.